So thanks, Maninder. Just to introduce myself, I'm Rahul Nene. Professionally, I work as the head of sustainability for Huhtamaki India. So Huhtamaki basically is a Finnish company, a global giant in flexibles packaging. And so when I say flexible packaging, mainly to consumer goods and food packaging, and even a bit of pharmaceutical packaging. But we are also into food and fiber services, which is basically paperboard based packaging. So like cups of Starbucks or Tim Hortons cups or the McDonald's and KFC packaging, all that stuff. So that's majorly our forte. I lead sustainability for the India footprint, so to say. So we have about 14 factories and offices and R&D, etc. So basically a mechanical engineer, and then for about 2.5 years, I worked in oil and gas. Absolutely not related to sustainability. In fact, anti-sustainability. That's the time actually when I came across such a function. And since childhood, I had a passion of visiting jungles and national parks. I do a bit of wildlife photography. So doing something related or for the betterment of nature or environment was somewhere there in my mind. And when I came across this field in the industry, I thought of taking it up as a career. So then I did my post graduation in sustainability management from NITI Mumbai, and then I was recruited on campus by Loreal. So I spent about 7 years with Loreal, and it was a great time with being there as well. I was there with a few other companies. So I was with a company called ACT 500, which is based in Bangalore, and then I was heading sustainability for Pidilite, which is basically Fevicol, Fevikwik. I was there, but for a short period, about 11 months, and then I joined Huhtamaki. So that's been my professional journey, based in Mumbai, originally from Pune. So when I wanted to do sustainability management at that time, it was not such a a fashionable or a career which was in focus. Yes. In fact, so many people ask me, why are you even taking it up? It's not a mainstream career. It's a cost center, not a profit center. Blah blah blah. All these terms were used for it, but it was something that I really wanted to do. Thankfully, it has worked out well for me as well. I don't honestly feel Monday morning blues. I like my work. I like going to my work. I'm quite excited.
When I was interacting with you, मुझे पता था कि because you love this topic so much and आप इतने active हो LinkedIn पे भी, you write a lot, you share a lot of content. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion कि क्या क्या हम figure out करेंगे, क्या क्या आप share करोगे. ESG or sustainability, sometimes it feels confusing whether these terms are same, different. अगर किसी layman person के लिए explain करना हो तो larger audience को समझ आ जाए and क्या differences हैं, कहाँ पर they are interconnected and how it works.
So some of it is very. I mean, to answer this question, some of the things that I'll say are written in stone. So there's no doubt about it. But some of the things are my perception and opinions also. So someone else might differ from it, but I'll at least give my perspective on it. So first, coming to sustainability. Generally, एक trend है कि people feel sustainability मतलब we are saving the planet, we are saving nature, we are saving environment. Honestly, the way I see it, and when I look from an industry perspective, or whatever is happening in the field of sustainability as a profession, honestly, I don't think we are trying to save the planet. Okay, we are trying to save humans as a species on this planet. The planet, in my opinion, will continue to survive in some way or the other. Like there were dinosaurs, something happened, they all vanished, and then the planet took a new form and it continued. So if things go really bad, I think, yeah, I mean there will be destruction, but the planet as such will continue to exist and it find its own way. I think nature will find its own way. What we as humans are trying to do through sustainability is protect ourselves and try and continue the life that we have kind of developed and ensure that it continues without much of a difference made in the way we are living our lives on this planet. So that to me is sustainability the way it is being functioning right now. The good part of it is that for us to sustain life on this planet the way it is, we do need to protect the planet also. Like for example, I mean, the whole focus on climate change, right? I mean, it is a scientific fact that there is a certain temperature change that is happening globally, and if it goes beyond a particular limit, it is going to be disastrous for us, for the planet, and then directly for us. So to protect us, we are trying to protect the planet. So that I think needs to be clarified in the mind. And so when the industry looks at it, even from the industry point of view, when a company is working on sustainability aspect, I think they are obviously trying to ensure that their businesses run well. Point number one. But point number two also, the impact that the business has, the environmental impact, the social impact that a business has, is not negative or is not detrimental to the environment. So there is definitely an aspect of protecting the planet, etc. But I feel it's the way it has been structured, it's an indirect outcome. But the primary outcome is we as a species trying to protect ourselves, we as a industry trying to protect ourselves, ensuring that there are no major disruptions to our life. So that's sustainability is sustaining something, right? So what we are trying to sustain is probably the life on this planet. But I wouldn't like to generalize also. There are definitely people who see a larger value to this, especially non-profit organizations. Some of them are really good. There are individuals who are really working, beyond just common objective. But if I have to generalize, that's where I think it kind of began, this profession. Obviously, then in this case, it also makes an important responsibility for a person like me. So when I say a person like me, a person who is in the profession of who is a sustainability professional, to drive sustainability in the right spirit, not just for greedy aspects, or not just for the aspect of your own continuation of business or continuation of life as usual, as we claim it, but doing it for the greater good. So ensuring that it is done in the right spirit is also a responsibility of sustainability professionals. Sometimes I think with the advent of so many things that's happening in sustainability, this spirit gets lost, is what I feel, and that's something that we should not forget. So overall, this is sustainability for me in my mind. Coming to ESG, I think ESG is a very industry-driven term that was coined by investors. I think it came up in the early 2000s. Okay. And as you know that, investors love indicators. We love a kind of a structured approach to things. So because sustainability is so vast, they want, so obviously, always we said, that I mean, businesses were ranked using their financial indicators or using their financial performance. Now, when sustainability came into picture, these are not direct financial indicators. These are, so to say, non-financial performance of the company, which is equally getting important day by day. And that is what sustainability was. And then came the concept of not having one bottom line, but triple bottom line approach. So it is people, planet, and profit. And then these kind of, so it was triple P approach. And then these kind of terms started getting formed to kind of have a collective approach towards the non-financial aspects or performance of a business. And then finally, I think ESG, so which is environment, social, and governance. So these are like the indirect or non-financial indicators which actually define the non-financial performance of a business. So that's where it's quite a term that is coined by investors, by industry professionals, to kind of give a structure to the aspect of sustainability. And then because now we need certain indicators to kind of rate the performance of companies, like we say, right, something that is not measured cannot be improved. So you need measurement yardsticks, so to say. So we have kind of clubbed sustainability into three buckets. So one is directly the environmental performance of a company, the environmental impacts of a company, the environment footprint of a company. But then comes the other non-financial aspects, which is the social aspect. So largely it was restricted to CSR in India before this, but now there is human rights, there's diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is health and safety, etc., etc. And then there is governance. It's about the how of doing business, how the ethics, the morals, the kind of processes that you use to run your business. That's what comes into the picture. So now ESG basically is a different way of, it's an industrial way or a financial way or an investor approach to sustainability.
You have explained it very well actually. Clear समझ आया है कि ESG को मुझे कैसे देखना चाहिए and sustainability को कैसे देखना चाहिए. And you have rightly mentioned जो the viewpoint you have shared that it's more about sustaining if we are talking about human species. And obviously there will be different aspects or different thought processes to every topic. As you rightly said, sustainability is a very big topic. So there are multiple minds to the same topic all across the globe. And ESG, I think, would it be right to say, because ये एक metric बनाया गया है just to try कि कैसे हम इसको quantify कर सकते हैं, that's why it's not that easy also for the companies now to adapt it, and they are still fighting somewhere to figure out that how it should be measured. Because I have heard a lot about this कि measurement is very difficult for ESG still.
Yeah, the thing is, first of all, I think it is new. It came up in the West in the early 2000s. So typically now I think in the last 3 or 4 years has it really, started coming into India. So if you see before COVID, there was no such big push. I think COVID somewhere also pushed this ESG agenda into India and globally also. That's what I feel. So it's new for the industries, point number one. Second thing is there are very few professionals who have lived the journey of sustainability over the last 10, 12 years, honestly. So suddenly you will see people from finance background, people from HR background, even people from operations background suddenly being asked to do something related to ESG, which they have not followed. They don't know the context. They don't know how things have, moved in this field. And then suddenly, if you just look at the entire gamut of ESG, environment may there is so many. There is waste, water, biodiversity, climate action. Climate action may also there is climate risk assessment, business continuity due to water scarcity. I mean, there is so much just in the environment part. And we as an Indian industrial setup were just used to legal compliances when it came to environment. On a very honestly, the only thing that environmental management really looked at was is your effluent characteristics at the outlet within limits? Are your pollution, I mean, basically your stack emissions within limits? That's what an environmental engineer was hired for in an Indian industry. And suddenly there is so much of additional requirement under this. Now this is just environment. There is similarly social. There's, like I said, and it's I mean, some of these things are difficult to quantify also, like human rights. Obviously, you can do audits and you can give a score, etc. But child labor, right, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not a subject that can just be put into a bracket of an indicator. Inclusion is such a soft aspect. So by soft, I don't mean weak. It's sometimes the mindset that it comes across. But what I mean is, it's not. It's there's a lot of humanity attached to it, which goes beyond indicators and handling such a thing. So imagine a person who is been suddenly given this responsibility of ESG, who say for example was an environmental engineer. There will be certain aspects that the person can look into on the environment side, but suddenly that person is now asked to look into the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect and then work with the HR, etc. The person will get lost. What exactly is this? Or then suddenly looking at something like anti-bribery policy or ethics and morals in under governance. I mean, it's too vast a topic if you have not really lived that journey. And because of investor push, because of industrial bodies working, because of regulatory requirements, too many things are expected out of industry suddenly now under this, and there are not enough people, I would say, who are equipped to handle all of this. And that's why it's difficult for people to gauge exactly what is happening. So that's the other thing. Third aspect I would say is, because it's new, there are still not a single unified system of defining indicators. Like, for example, if you have to just disclose your ESG footprint, right? If you have to make a sustainability report for that matter, obviously the most popular one is GRI guidelines that we have. But now in India, we have something called as the BRSR, which came out from the SEBI. It's similar, but still there is a different one. Then there are multiple other avenues through which you can report your ESG footprint, so to say. Now, which one to use? Right? Certain set of investors might ask for something. Suddenly someone else might ask for something. Then there will be push from, say, organizations like CDP, which is Carbon Disclosure Project, that they will invite industries to kind of report their environmental performance on their matrices. There is something like Sustainalytics. There's Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So it's so there's no unified system. There are so many varying systems that are available. It can become confusing as to what to use, where to use what, and so because there's no unified system, there's too much information, people not equipped to handle it. I think there is a lot of confusion and etc. that's happening. But I think that slowly it will settle down somewhere.
It's the maturity, I guess.
Maturity when as and how it matures, I think it will settle down.
Correct. I have seen while talking to multiple people in the industry or colleagues with whom I worked earlier, everyone is saying that companies are now trying to make small videos, informational content in terms of training, so that employees can slowly understand what ESG is, what sustainability is in their area, how they can try to align with the overall policy. But before coming to supply chain, मतलब अगर मैं पूरा गैम्यूट देखता हूँ सारी इंडस्ट्रीज का, आपके हिसाब से कौन सी ऐसी इंडस्ट्री है जिसने इसको थोड़ा फास्ट ट्रैक पे करना शुरू कर दिया है और हो सकता है वो आगे जाके लीडिंग एग्जांपल बन जाए इस चीज को इम्प्लीमेंट करने में? I think FMCG as a sector has taken it really well, is what I would say. That's been my experience. Of course, I have been largely
also associated with the FMCG sector, so that's why I know the sector well, and isliye probably there is a how do I say bias in my mind as well. But I really feel that if you see today which are the big companies that are leading on this front, you would think of names like Unilever, which is basically an FMCG major, right? I worked with L'Oreal, so I definitely would like to speak of L'Oreal because I mean I learned a lot on sustainability from L'Oreal and the way it designed its sustainability program. And honestly, if I look back, L'Oreal had, I'm just taking that example because I saw it from within and from close quarters. They had first started talking of sustainability and taken indicators in the with a baseline of year 2005. And they had certain indicators for 2015 when not many companies were doing it. And when I actually, in 2011 to 13 in my MBA, we learned certain models on how you can, really gauge the sustainability strategy of a company. There are certain specific models you can chart it and etc. And when I did that, so as an interesting exercise after I joined L'Oreal, I actually fitted the sustainability strategy of L'Oreal on those particular graphs.
Okay.
And I found that it's quite well established and which surprised me. And this was in year 2015-16. So I think, I mean, since I've seen FMCG as a sector from close by, I think it's one sector that is really taking it well. The other aspect is FMCG as a sector really connects with the consumers directly, right? I mean, you and
Correct.
me consume so many products every day, which is
Yes.
from the basically the FMCG sector. And because consumer awareness is increasing, it creates a direct pressure on FMCG companies also to kind of do their bit. I mean, you are also working with Mondelez, right? So you would know what is the kind of pressure that companies can have when it comes to environment or social governance aspects of it. I am now working in packaging, so we know that what is the focus around sustainable packaging. The whole focus on plastics and plastic waste, it's so much increasing. There is so many regulatory requirements coming in. So yeah, I mean, I think if I have to answer one sector, I think FMCG sector is
Is
leading.
one of the leading sectors you were saying. And the good part is that FMCG is also known for their intricate supply chain. Like we used to, when I was also studying, we had lots of case studies from FMCG to understand the aspects of supply chain, what they have done and
Correct.
everything. But before going further, the one sector, I just want to know your opinion. Like, what do you feel about it? Automotive sector and specifically EV. Now,
Hmm.
lots of people are talking, and they started recently that we are not looking at the complete picture.
Correct.
EVs are benefiting, people are saying, in terms of consumption of resources or overall benefiting other parameters. But if we'll start from the source
Yeah.
of how this whole process looks like, it's not that good. If we see, it's comparatively better than the, for example, internal combustion engines for that process. But so what is your opinion? Like, that is also one aspect of complexity this involves, that to look at the complete picture, it also takes lots of effort and it needs maturity. Like, what do you think about it? General opinion.
I think you're absolutely right. So we have a concept called as life cycle assessment, okay,
Okay.
which is basically anything that you decide, and that's one of my most the largest area of interest for me personally, also in sustainability. So basically, it actually studies the entire life cycle of any product. So you might take an automobile, basically any car, and you compare it with an EV. And you basically study the environmental footprint of that particular product from its manufacturing stage to usage to disposal, and then it's how you define your scope of that study. So yes, I mean, before we actually conclude that something is actually sustainable or more beneficial, this life cycle assessment needs to be done. Now coming to the specific question of EVs against fossil fuel based cars. So obviously, I mean, one aspect, if you just look from the immediate emissions point of view, burning petrol or diesel compared to that I mean running on electricity, obviously the emissions are lesser, right? But then if you look at the entire life cycle of it, right, first I think the charging, we in India still are heavily dependent on coal and non-renewable sources of energy. So yes, probably you are not burning fuel on the roads, but you are still getting energy from majorly from non-renewable sources and charging it somewhere else and then running. Obviously your emissions in the city will go down, but still it at a larger or a macro level, it is not fully helping the environment. You are still burning non-renewable energy sources. So hand in hand with EV, it also is necessary that our grid electricity becomes renewable. which, I mean, honestly, India has taken a target of, 500 gigawatts by 2030 and 50%. But I mean, till last year, till 2021, I think we are doing well in that roadmap. But last year, I think we have not met our own target. So, I'm still skeptical whether we'll really reach that target. But if that does not happen, then, the benefit of EVs comes under a bit of question mark. Then there is obviously the aspect of battery usage. How are you going to dispose those amount of batteries, the mining that goes into the heavy metals that are required for those batteries, right? So I honestly have tried to search. I've heard a lot of people. Keep visiting so many sustainability conferences and etc. People give out, various life cycle assessments. I have not seen a unbiased thorough life cycle assessment, to be honest. That, I can with guarantee say, this is the right thing, EV is better, or no, EV is not the better, etc. I have heard varying opinions. I think the answer to this is we really need to do an in-depth and matured study around it and really define our regulations and our next footprint basis scientific study.
Correct.
Obviously, beyond this, I think hydrogen is coming up as a fuel. And that is, from whatever I have read till now, that could be really a game changer. Again, the way you produce hydrogen, if it is from renewable sources, it could be really beneficial. If it is not done in the right way, it could be wrong. But from what I hear, most automobile companies are also looking at, I mean, they have already started developing hydrogen engines. So, not necessarily from a fuel cell, but from hydrogen directly. So, my only objective is we should have a scientific data-based approach to all of this, and just not, look at a narrow footprint, like just on the roads or emissions on the roads, and decide that this is better.
करेक्ट. एक इंटरेस्टिंग इनपुट मैं सोच रहा था मैं यहाँ पर शेयर करता हूँ, मे बी आपको पता हो. Recently I got to know that there are blood diamonds जो mining के through निकलते हैं, then there are lab grown diamonds.
Correct.
So what I felt when I heard about it for the first time, that lab grown diamond means they might be as नकली diamonds and blood diamond would be original diamonds. But I was surprised to know that the lab grown diamonds are actually original diamonds. The composition is same. The only thing is that they're producing it in a lab under the same conditions.
Absolutely.
And the moment the person who explained me this, I was able to relate that this is also part of sustainability, because he told me that the exploitation of human resources, the laborers जो काम करते हैं mining में, वो कम होगा अगर if we will move to lab grown diamonds.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
when you look at ESG aspect under ESG, I mean, lab-grown diamonds are much more better, or far better than the naturally mined diamonds, so to say, on the S&G parameter. I mean, I was also watching a couple of documentaries on the concept of diamonds itself. What they say is, I mean, the biggest thing that we have been told is, diamonds are rare, and diamonds are how do I say, they are a symbol of love, right? And then, I mean, what these documentaries show that, diamonds are definitely not that rare in the world. It's just how the supply is withheld so that they are made artificially rare in the market, and then their prices are blown out. And then they came out with this beautiful marketing, terminologies like diamonds are forever, and you want love, forever love, for example. So that's why it became a symbol of love, and the engagement rings, etc. So it's absolutely a marketing gimmick made to fool customers, etc. And then, like you said, the social governance aspects and the footprint of it is really, really sad.
I was very surprised also, and I was very happy also, because if the end consumer is getting the same product but in a sustainable way, you are solving a very big problem. Only thing is कि वो थोड़ा emotion का बात है कि कुछ लोग बोलते हैं अरे नहीं original diamond original होता है, but more about you being educated and you have an understanding of what exactly the product is.
Absolutely. It happens. A close friend of mine, when she got married, she in fact was adamant that she buys a lab grown diamond, and she's quite aware of this thing. So there is hope. I would say that people start.
Supply chain part पे अगर हम आते हैं, तो आपने बेस्ट पार्टीज के एफएमसीजी का तो आपने काम किया हुआ है, आप मैनेज भी कर रहे हैं, सो यू नो द इन एंड आउट ऑफ इट. सप्लाई चेन साइड में जैसे अगर सपोज किसी को समझना हो कि किस टाइप के इनिशिएटिव्स हो रहे हैं सप्लाई सस्टेनेबिलिटी में, जहाँ फिर ईएसजी में क्या क्या चीजें मेजर हो पा रही हैं आजकल. जैसे सपोज कोई पर्सन है जो सस्टेनेबिलिटी में काम कर रहा है, लाइक यू आर हेडिंग करंटली, और मे बी देयर माइट बी अ टीम जो मतलब अभी हेड नहीं कर पा रहे, दे आर स्टिल मिडिल मैनेजमेंट एंड they are driving some operational activities. उस point of view से what is happening in supply chain field?
I think when it comes to sustainability, and if I speak of supply chain in FMCG or any other sector for that matter, my opinion is the next 10 years are going to belong to sustainability in supply chain. And I'll tell you why. Because when you look at the sustainability footprint, I'll start with the environmental footprint. You just look at just carbon emissions, right? So the carbon emissions जब हम measure करते हैं कोई भी organization का, it is generally bifurcated into three scopes. So scope one emissions मतलब emissions arising out of the fuel that you burn on your site. So अगर आपकी factory है, you are burning diesel, or if you have boilers and you are burning fuel in that, etc., etc., that is your scope one emissions, or any emissions coming out of your owned assets, basically. Scope 2 is the emissions that are associated with the electricity or the third party energy that you use, right? So majorly हमारे यहाँ electricity रहता है, sometimes you use third party generated steam, etc., ऐसा कुछ होगा. So that is scope 2. And scope 3 is the rest of the value chain of the product. So it's your sourcing, it's your distribution, it's your employee travel, it's your end of life disposal. So जो upstream supply chain है वो, downstream supply chain है वो, end of life disposal of your product, even the employee travel, business travel, all of this is under scope 3. Now, if you look at general benchmarks in the industry, 80 to 90% of the footprint of the company is in scope 3. Okay. Now, since sustainability, ESG, all of these things are new, it is quite obvious that companies started first working on what was in their absolute control, which is the emissions in their own or the footprint of their own assets, right? So they worked on scope 1 emissions. You can obviously control what kind of electricity that you consume. Do you want to do renewable? So they worked on scope 2 emissions or the scope 2 footprint. So basically तुम्हारे factory में से waste क्या निकलता है, that is your scope 1 operation. तुम्हारा own water consumption, your own energy consumption, your own emissions. So this is what companies have been majorly focusing on. This is what companies have taken majorly targets, etc. But the scope 3, which is like I said, 80 to 90% of the footprint of the company, most of it is outside the direct control of the company. There are a lot of things under scope 3 emissions, so to say, which are absolutely outside the control of a company. So that's something that companies did not tackle first, obviously. Now, over last 4 or 5 years, I feel that companies have got a good hold over their own footprint. They are in a good level of measurement. पहले तो starting with measurement, exactly अपने emissions कितने हैं, कितना footprint है, and then putting in projects how to improve them. I think companies, the good companies at least have a good idea, and even the companies which are not good are following suit, and they know what to do when it comes to scope 1 and scope 2 aspects. But the supply chain part है, that has been still not so well worked upon. But जो हम बोल रहे हैं कि there are companies who have declared net zero ambitions, for example, right? So when you say net zero ambitions, you are saying that you will offset the entire scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions of your company. Like for example, I think Unilever, if I'm not wrong, unka target है 2043 for net zero. Now they are majorly working on scope 1 and scope 2. They will probably have good action plans on working on scope 1 and scope 2. But now they will have to focus, if they have to reach net zero in 2043, which is 20 years ahead, they will have to start working on their supply chain, right? So the first answer to your question is a lot of, and this has started happening not just in MNCs, but even I've seen in Indian companies. If you see today, companies have started recruiting for supply chain sustainability experts. Just these roles are also coming up where a person is expected to focus on sustainability in the supply chain. And why is this coming up now? Because companies have started focusing on sustainability in supply chain. So that's the one thing. A deeper focus on supply chain is coming. That's point number 1, right? Second, in terms of what is happening, I think majorly right now companies are trying to come to a solid framework in which they can measure their supply chain footprint. Problem क्या है, for example, कि like I said, because so many things are out of their control, so many things they don't know how the measurement is done. For example, Mondelez asks Huhtamaki, what is your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions? They don't know how we are calculating our GHG emissions. We can give you a number, but do they have assurance that obviously we as a company, we take responsibility that we are doing the right thing, but not every company might do it, right? So getting the right measurement, or something like business travel, right? How many employees are traveling, how much, what is the emission associated with it, etc., etc. End of life disposal, I mean distribution from your factories to your distribution houses, वहां से कंज्यूमर तक, how the consumers are using, how it is getting in discarded, how what is the energy spent into say either disposing it off or either recycling it, blah blah blah. ये सब calculate करने में ही it's going to be difficult. So before you really see that we'll offset the emissions and etc., the first biggest task is going to be first calculating that entire footprint. And I think that's where most of the companies are. They are trying to get a good command over measuring their scope 3 emissions. I think the good companies, the major FMCG companies, at least have a certain ballpark understanding of what they are. So when we were in L'Oreal, they had a certain basic estimation. I think 80 to 90% accuracy estimation is there from at least most of the companies, which are at the forefront of leading sustainability programs. So, but many companies are trying to gauge right now. So that's something that is happening, trying to first measure the scope 3 or supply chain footprint. Now, if I have to look from the ESG aspect onto the supply chain, right? So obviously there is like I said, the emissions aspect, which is ensuring what are first measuring the scope 3 emissions of a company, which are going to be through in the supply chain. So a lot of work needs to be done with suppliers, with distributors, with third party manufacturers, with end of life disposal agencies, with consumers, etc., to kind of measure this. Point number one. Point number two, then will come the improvement plans, right? Or how are we going to reduce our scope 3 emissions? This is the next step. And then implementing those action plans. And what is going to happen is, for this to actually really be done in a successful way, because so much of it is dependent on other organizations, it cannot be done in isolation. A company cannot just say, I'll work on my scope 3 emissions and, but things are not in their control. They will have to work with their suppliers. They'll have to work with the distributors. They'll have to work with the customers. They'll have to work with consumers. They'll have to work with regulatory bodies to set up, say, end of life disposal treatment systems, which are, say, running on renewable energy, for example. So if you look at United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are formed in 2015, the UN SDG 17, which talks of partnerships and associations for leading sustainability, these formations of associations is going to be extremely critical, and that's what is happening. I think a lot more companies are now connecting with their suppliers, connecting with all these external stakeholders to, like I said, first measure and then start developing action plans towards improving that. So I think the many companies have internal action plans for the year 2025, for year 2030, which are established and which are more focused on scope 1 and scope 2 activities. But a lot of internal work is going on in measuring and developing action plans. What's going to happen beyond 2025, what's going to happen beyond 2030, and it will be absolutely focused on the supply chain, right? And working on the supply chain can also have positive impacts on your own assets. I'll give you an example on a project that we worked earlier. Like, for example, the raw material sent by one of our suppliers, obviously it came into a certain secondary, primary and secondary packaging, right? And then that packaging, when we removed, it became waste for our own factories. So we worked with the suppliers, to do we really need all of this secondary packaging? We got rid of the secondary packaging. We were able to ascertain the quality during transport and ensuring that there was no quality impact or damage to the material. And we were just be able to achieve it through primary packaging. A significant amount of waste was reduced in our factories also by working with the supplier. And it was beneficial for the supplier also, because they were buying that secondary packaging unnecessarily and sending it to us. Their cost reduced. And they were more than happy to make the switch. And it actually worked out best for us. So working on this with external stakeholders, and that will obviously have impact on your reduction of the footprint of your supply chain, but it will also help. There will be avenues where it will help your own assets as well. So these kind of projects, these kind of things are happening. Now, this is on the environmental part of it.
Yes.
There is definitely a huge aspect of the social and governance part of it. So when I say social, ensuring that human rights are maintained in the entire supply chain. Today, if a big brand or a big company, they're working with a supplier and it comes out that the supplier is involved in, say, child labor, the brand that is going to get impacted is that bigger company, right? So from the brand image point of view, and second, again, from the requirements of sustainability, companies are focused on ensuring that they are working with suppliers who are compliant on regulatory requirements, who are paying their workers well. There's no child labor, human rights are not compromised, there is no molestation or harassment or sexual harassment cases. So all these, doing these assessments of your suppliers, that is another big activity that's happening. So most companies today have certain assessment scorecards for their suppliers. At least companies are working with their top 20 or top 25 suppliers and ensuring that they are screened. There are audits, there are quality audits were always there, but now there are sustainability audits, there are human rights audits that are being done at suppliers and to ensure that these things are controlled in the supply chain. So working anyone who is working on supply chain, anyone, any say purchase person or a procurement person will today not just look at the cost aspect of working with a supplier. They will look at their environmental, slowly and steadily they'll look at and we already have questionnaires. They look at their environmental footprint, they'll look at their social aspects, they'll look at compliances, they'll look at their human rights checks, etc., etc. And honestly, for companies who are supplying to these bigger companies, it's going to be a business value also to it, because bigger companies would want to work with suppliers who are compliant and doing good on the ESG aspects of it. Even, I mean, for example, something like anti-bribery, ethics and morals. I mean, all these aspects while working with suppliers, while working with distributors, external stakeholders are getting a lot of importance. And then coming to, so this is more I was talking from supply chain, I mean, the supply part of it and the procurement part of it. But similar, it kind of flows into the downstream also, right? I mean, your distributors, how you are working with them, similar kind of aspect, how the environmental footprint there, the social footprint there, whom are you working with, the warehouses that you're working with, what is the health and safety maintained over there, for example. So the assessments over there, working with consumers, improving the consumer awareness. For example, if right now consumer is just throwing off packaging of a particular company, and if you want to enable the consumer to kind of collect it back from them, we call it as EPR, right? So if you want to drive consumer behavior, you need to kind of create those awareness avenues, etc., with the consumers. So all of these things are going to slowly and steadily start coming up. Communication on the environmental footprint of your products to the consumers, this is something that is picking up today.
Correct.
We pick chips packet and you see the calorie count of it.
Yes.
Tomorrow, I'm sure, years down the line, there will be a table which will show the environmental footprint of the product. I think it was Nike or some shoe company which already has started doing it. They're printing their environmental footprint of the shoe. So, I mean, I spoke a lot of things and in bits and pieces. What I mean to say is the scope of supply chain in a product, especially in the FMCG sector, is so vast. But the absolute focus for the next 10-15 years when it comes to sustainability is going to be on the supply chain part of it. Responsible sourcing, as you say. So we are working with paper-based packaging, right? Now which paper is made from trees, ensuring that the paper that we are sourcing, for example, does not lead to deforestation, right?
Okay.
So we have certification like Forest Stewardship Council, which actually ensures that there is no deforestation caused by the paper we are procuring. So ensuring that we are procuring the right things. Say a company, many FMCG companies require palm oil. You must have heard a lot of issues that come up with palm oil procurement, because in the Philippines and other such countries, a lot of biodiversity impacts happen because of palm oil farming. You must have seen there's a very famous photograph of a orangutan standing in front of a big backhoe loader, and the loader is basically cutting down trees. And this was for a palm oil farming. I mean, basically trees were cut down, and so we as a species were impacting the biodiversity to basically farm for palm oil. So now companies have taken cognizance of this fact, and they are ensuring that they are procuring palm oil from places where there is no deforestation cause, there is no impact on biodiversity, etc., etc. All these aspects are going to come under supply chain. So you can just imagine that there is no limit to it, to what it's going to what it's going to entail. And I think I would say people who are going to work on supply chain, or people who are going to work in this domain, really need to brace up. But I would say it's also a beautiful opportunity, because it actually brings some really good things to the planet, so to say, if you do it in the right spirit. And it brings value. I mean, I'm also a true believer that if you work on sustainability in the right way, it always brings in economic value also. You reduce waste, you work on efficiency, you work on optimization of processes, etc. I mean, just to reduce your scope 3 emissions, you might just see wall to wall supplier to company concepts. There a supplier might just put up a small shop next to a large factory and supply from there to there. You reduce your scope 3 emissions. We don't know. I mean, the optimization might work that way. So
Correct.
there's a lot that can be done. I think it's not just going to be limited to supply chain professionals. There's a lot of data analytics that's going to go into this. There's a lot of
Correct.
statistical modeling that will be going into this. And I think honestly, exciting times coming up.
करेक्ट. काफी ज्यादा वास्ट सब्जेक्ट को फिर भी कोशिश करके
I don't know if I spoke of many things, but I don't.
I will pick each and every point जो आपने one by one cover किया है. But जब आप when you were sharing about that carbon footprint, so these days वो one of the best examples is that when you book a flight, they share the footprint, carbon footprint. They showed if you'll book this flight, this is the carbon footprint. So I think that's the simplest way to check.
When I was working with Loreal, when I left at the end of the year, the employees could understand कि उनके साल में जो business travel हुए, what was the carbon footprint.
Yes.
And in fact, they had started limiting business travel for unnecessary things, which is going to impact scope 3 emissions. I mean, I know I won't take names, but I know companies where emissions due to business travel are equivalent to the emissions coming out of their factories put together.
Oh.
इतना बड़ा, I mean, it's not a small. When I say business travel, you feel क्या है इतना सा छोटा? It's not that. It's significant.
Significant.
Especially multinational companies. So it is something that you need to work upon. You, in the sense, we as professionals need to work upon.
करेक्ट. सो अभी अगर मैं इसको जिस्ट में पकड़ूं फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, तो यू हैव एम्फसाइज्ड अ लॉट ऑन पार्टनरशिप कि ऐसा एक लिंक आप निकाल के यू कैन नॉट इम्प्लीमेंट इट. यू हैव टू वर्क टुगेदर, चाहे वो सप्लायर साइड से हो, चाहे वो इंटरनली हो, या फिर कोई ऐसी रेगुलेटरी stakeholders. So you have to work with the agencies also, you have to work internally also, you have to work with your outside stakeholders as well. And it will not happen in one go, because like what you mentioned at the last, that because it will involve lots of data. अगर आपको framework बनाना है तो framework में you will enter lots of things. ये भी measure करना है, ये भी measure करना है. It will involve lots of data. Then it will go back to that point कि data measure कैसे करना है. You rightly mentioned the statistics and the data measurement tools, how to collect data, everything will come into picture. तो वो एक अलग addition हो गया कि how it will happen. Then how you will track it in terms of KPIs also. I'm sure that जैसे आप बता रहे हो कि in coming time, like I'm into sourcing, so ऐसा भी हो सकता है in coming time, it might become a very important KPI that how we are driving it.
Definitely. Oh, definitely.
Yes, because this economic inclusion angle, this has already become a KPI now. That, for example, how many suppliers you are working with who are belonging to diversity, or they are belonging to that part of economic benefits, like they are small suppliers. How are you supporting them? It's already a part of KPI, and I'm sure that sustainability will get into that part area. The measurement will happen. And
if you see the BRSR framework जो सेबी ने रिलीज किया है, वो पूछता है कि how many of the suppliers that you're working with are MSMEs, how many of them are based in or they are based from vulnerable areas or sources of economic vulnerability, etc. So even, I mean, जो सेबी का framework है is talking about it, and it will only grow from here.
Correct. So मेरे को लग रहा है कि like it's a very big task which will have a very positive impact, and that's why it's not easy also, because you cannot take a half cooked meal in this area. अगर आपको कुछ मेजर करना है तो अच्छे से ही करना पड़ेगा मेजर. यू कैन नॉट डू कि ठीक है 4-5 कर लो पैरामीटर्स, बाकी बाद में देख लेंगे. सो आई टोटली एग्री विद यू. जो आपने ये पूरा इकोसिस्टम टाइप आपने समझाने की कोशिश की है कि क्या क्या एलिमेंट्स हैं और सब जुड़ेंगे साथ में धीरे धीरे करके, एंड इट विल टेक टाइम. जो आपने टाइम फ्रेम बताया है,
adding a point. So, and because this is the case, right, multiple functions in the company are going to be involved in sustainability. Like, for example, if you have to be a part of industry associations, your PR and public advocacy team also needs to know, because they are the ones who generally end up representing, right? Unless you have someone else as an expert. So they are all involved. Sourcing तो है ही, operations भी है ही, the supply chain team तो है ही, but marketing team भी है, for example, or there will be sales who, because वो distribution side पे आएंगे, consumer side पे आएंगे, customer side पे आएंगे. So everyone is going to get involved, or not going to. They have already started getting involved. I mean, between you and me, recently I took a sustainability training internally in our company. I remember 10 years ago when I used to take training on sustainability or etc. 20 लोग आते थे, majorly from operations or majorly from environment profile. This time when I took, so many people attended. Point number 1. Point number 2, majority were from sales and marketing. Now imagine, because people, they know, the customers are talking to them, they want to know what it is. And
Yes,
so now they're involved. So this is also another aspect. All functions, finance bolo, HR bolo, कि वो diversity equity आएगा, legal bolo, everyone is getting involved today in sustainability.
correct. I agree. I totally agree because some part of it I'm also aware because I'm
I'm
also
sure.
trying to learn it and I trying to support the organization with the goals in those terms. Correct. So, Abhi, I know that it has to be a top-driven approach in such a manner that everyone is aware that this is important. But that is a part I think is a very big topic altogether. To simplify for the audience, अगर जैसे आपने इतनी चीजें बताई, अगर कोई ऐसा पर्सन है, एक्सपीरियंस है इंडस्ट्री का, ऑलरेडी वर्किंग इन द इंडस्ट्री फॉर फ्यू इयर्स, नोज बेसिक क्या होता है इंडस्ट्री के अंदर, या फिर कोई बिगिनर वैसे ही है, फ्रेशर है, एंड समवेयर दे फील दैट ये एरिया ग्रो होने वाला है, इसमें अगर दे विल वर्क एंड दे फील दैट इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, सो दैट्स व्हाई दे वांट टू वर्क. सो क्या जर्नी हो सकती है टू गेट इनटू दिस एरिया, कैसे दे कैन एक्वायर स्किल्स और दे कैन ट्राई टू फिगर आउट, ट्रेनिंग्स लेनी चाहिए या फिर दे शुड स्टडी समथिंग, और कैसे दे कैन ड्राइव सम प्रोजेक्ट्स?
Are you asking in terms of like someone wants to make a switch to sustainability as a profession or imbibe sustainability in their own work? Is what you're saying?
Mostly imbibe, because
Okay.
switch is altogether is a different topic. So imbibe,
Different.
for example, मैं अपने एग्जांपल लेता हूँ, मैं भी अगर कल को imbibe करना चाहता हूँ apart from what company is suggesting us, but personally also because मैं भी कपड़े खरीदता हूँ, I also buy mobile phones, I also buy appliances, so it's a way of living actually for me.
I think it's an interesting question. First, I'll answer from, being a professional point of view. So what I would suggest, the easiest and the best way to do it is first understand what is the sustainability strategy of your own company. What has your company committed to, right? And I'm sure every company has some or the other sustainability, even if it is nascent stage pe though, but there is definitely. First, understand that, of all the indicators that are there in that sustainability strategy, I'm sure there will be at least one indicator that touch bases with your function. If
Okay.
you're in HR, it would be human rights, it would be policies, for example. It could be POSH, for example. It could be working with, if you're in legal, it could be the governance policies that you have, there will be regulatory compliances towards it. If you are in operations, then I think there is vast. I don't even need to speak about it. If you're in sales and marketing, obviously, it could be end of life treatment, it would be consumer awareness, it could be understanding how to best communicate your environmental social footprint to your consumers. If you're a supplier and you're working with customers, so you always need to understand that your product is going to be a part of the environmental and the social footprint of your customer. So how can you add value to your customer's footprint by working on your product? First thing is understand the strategy of your company and understand वो strategy में, sustainability strategy में, how it is impacting my particular function.
Okay.
And then once you understand, I'm sure there will be at least one indicator. If there is finance, for example, there is sustainability linked bonds that companies take, for example, or if it's just profit, it could be from a savings point of view. But just today, if you move to a renewable electricity as compared to state grid electricity, there will be cost savings. So that's how a finance person today can definitely get impacted by sustainability. It could be a cost saving measure for them, right? But it will bring in sustainability benefit. So the global strategy of the company might be shifting to 100% renewable electricity. The way a finance person can look at it is, if my KPI is to reduce my budget or reduce my expenses, I will work in terms of shifting with the electricity for my factories from this percent to this percent renewable. It will help the strategy, but it will satisfy my KPI also. So ये जो correlation between that sustainability strategy and your function, ये पहले I think people should really understand what it is.
Correct.
And then once this is well understood, then you can take up projects. Okay, the simplest way to take projects, I would say, if you are absolutely new and you don't have an experience, read sustainability reports of similar companies or other companies.
Okay.
इतना बस करोगे ना, just take 5 to 6, take Unilever, take L'Oreal, take Nestle, P&G, these 4-5 companies, and read sustainability reports in depth. You will understand what other companies are doing. You will get ideas in your function. That's the basic thing that you can do. And start with a project. In terms of making career switch, so many people reach out to me and ask, yeah, now I want to move to sustainability. but मुझे कोई experience ही नहीं है, मैं क्या करूँ? So if you have to work on sustainability, my opinion is the umbrella of sustainability is so large. Every professional can contribute towards sustainability. Start with whatever your strength is, whatever your profession is, whatever you are already doing. Find that connect with your sustainability strategy. Take up a
Right.
project, 2-3 projects. Like if you're working with sourcing, right? Start with creating the benchmark in terms of measurement of your scope 3 emissions for say top 20 suppliers. Okay, start with an audit program for I'm sure you will have human rights as an ESG aspect in Mondelez. Start with assessments of your suppliers. Take these 2-3 projects which correlate sourcing to your sustainability strategy. Do those 2-3 projects. What I feel is my general experience is companies today, there is so much to work when it comes to sustainability. When employees take these kind of initiatives and they go beyond just their regular KPIs and do start helping towards sustainability, एक अपर मैनेजमेंट को रियलाइजेशन होता है कि भाई दीज पीपल दे आर वांटिंग टू गो द एक्स्ट्रा माइल टुवर्ड्स सस्टेनेबिलिटी. मेरा एक्सपीरियंस है the management starts involving them in the sustainability framework of the company. They will be the first people they'll pick to drive projects. I'll give an example. In one of the companies that I worked, there was this girl who was working in product development, but she had a personal interest in sustainability and environmental stewardship, etc. It was not even her KPI, and this is 6-7 years ago, right? But it was not even in her KPI, nothing, but she had a personal interest towards it. So she kind of worked with the packaging supplier to change the structure of the packaging to use lesser plastic. अब उसका direct ये footprint नहीं है, but when she explained this to the upper management कि because I have worked on this, our product today, earlier every SKU was using this much gram of plastic. Today it will use 20% lesser plastic. As a whole, if you are selling these many SKUs, we have stopped usage of this much amount of virgin plastic. And plastic is basically polymer coming from oil and gas, right? So it is basically it's coming from non-renewable sources. So you have helped the environment that way. When she was able to, and I've seen this live, it's happened in front of my eyes. When she was able to make this correlation to the strategy and towards the overall, when you could give the bigger picture to it, she was so lauded by the management, honestly. And then she actually started working on sustainable packaging, जो उसका main KPI था भी नहीं, and she started with interest. So मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये जो ऐसा टॉपिक है, इवन फॉर मी दिस प्रोफेशन आई टुक वाज आउट ऑफ passion for environment, etc. So somewhere the trigger point sometimes comes from your passion or your own interest or your own emotion out of it, but make that correlation between the strategy and what your function does. Even if your company does not have a strategy, look for a similar company which has a strategy and see how your functions are working under that strategy and take that up as a project and start doing projects. That's the best immediate thing. Obviously I can speak more, but for the paucity of time, this is the first big thing that you can do. 2-3 projects kar lo, you will start getting a hang of things. And when management sees that you're getting involved in all of this, they will involve you more. Your exposure to your sustainability footprint or your sustainability strategy of the company will improve. The more you get exposed, the more understanding you will develop, the more opportunities you will see to do more projects, and you will start getting involved.
I think it's a very practical approach. I totally agree with this approach. And I think it's easier to do this also because you can get access to the resources also.
Yeah.
And you have the base to do some trials also. Because, for example, if I want to do some trial in sourcing, I know with whom I can do the trial.
Correct.
And use that as a use case. So I totally agree with you on this. I think it's the best.
So again, if you look for courses, मैं course करूँगा. See, if you are a student and wanting to make a profession in sustainability, वो अलग बात है. Then you do an MBA and you do a course and a post graduation and you do it. If not, that's not your full profession, but you want to imbibe sustainability in everything that you do, so to say, then no need to start with. But if you want to learn additional, there are some courses that you can do, but it's not a necessity, to be honest. Just to get a beginner understanding, you can take up a free course in Coursera, but start working practically काम करके. I think it will make much more sense.
Like internships or maybe approach seniors, industry people that I want to work with you. Can you
work, yeah,
project or something?
If it's a pressure, I think you should definitely not look at money and etc. Just find ways where like for example, one profession that can really contribute to sustainability is data analytics. Now a person might not be a sustainability background, a person who is really strong on statistical analysis can really bring a lot of value for sustainability. And so if you're interested in doing that, take up a project, take up an internship with a company, and I'm sure, and don't look for money. You say that, why not take a 3-month internship, which is not paid. अगर नहीं मिल रहा है पेड अपॉर्चुनिटी तो, but learn from it. And then once you have that experience, you gain an understanding, you start pitching for bigger projects which ultimately will be paid and you can improve. But practically doing it and using your strength which you already have to address one aspect of sustainability under environment social governance, ये पकड़ के start with it, the
Yes.
person can grow.
Totally agree, and I think इसके साथ I'm able to cover all the questions and the gamut of this today's discussion. राहुल, मेरे को बहुत मजा आया बात करके आपसे. You have explained it very well. Thanks a lot, आपने टाइम दिया मेरे को and for this very fruitful discussion. I look forward to have more discussions with you.
This topic is so close to my heart. मैं कितना भी बात कर सकता हूँ इसके बारे में. So I'm more than always happy to have these conversations. So
Correct.
It's been an absolute pleasure.